like your shirt tonight, Terry.
Vern, stop here.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. In memory of Vern. Yeah. Pray for Carolyn. I just messaged with her yesterday. She's doing pretty well. Dealing with an aneurysm in her left eye still. So, yeah. But she's doing as well as can be expected. She's in her mid-80s and lives alone. Her daughter's 3 hours one way and 3 hours the other way. So they're not that close. But she's doing well. We are in Genesis. For some reason, I was going to Esther. I wonder why. Yeah, sorry, we're going to be away from Esther now for just a couple weeks because we'll have our missionary this week. I'll do my best I probably will have to break it up into 2 different messages to finish up because of the anniversary Sunday. So I'll start things on the anniversary Sunday and probably finish the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So that's kind of the plan. Genesis 14. We're looking right now at the life of Abram. He becomes Abraham, but not yet. And so he is learning from the past. And we'll get into that here in just a moment. Are there things in your life that you've seen come back up? And you say, boy, I'm glad I experienced that so I don't do it again. You know, where we actually learn from the past. Or you might look at a child and you wish they would learn from the past, right? Come on, get with the program. Don't do that again. You just hurt yourself or you hurt us or whatever the case might be. Learning from the past is important. It's a very important thing. It shows maturity. As a believer, it shows maturity as an adult. You know, when we learn from the past, we experience something, we say, I don't want to do that again. I'm going to choose to do something different. And I think we see that here in chapter 14 with Abram. If you just look through it quickly, you may miss it. But what you'll see as we get into the text is from chapter 12, when he went to Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, he said, say that you're my sister. So she did, and she was beautiful and brought into the harem, and then it didn't go well. So they were thrust out of the country. Well, why did they go to Egypt? Why did Abram and Sarai go to Egypt? Famine. Famine in the land. My next question, should they have gone to Egypt? No. Why? Okay, they didn't seek God. Okay, it was the place where God wanted them. Yeah, so both. It was, God said, I'm going to bring you to a land, and so he brought them to the land. God didn't say, I'm going to bring you to the land. When you have hardship, get out of the land, right? And so it was, he left of his own volition, went down to Egypt, had trouble, went back in chapter 13. He went back to the land that the Lord had promised. And the scriptures indicate that he went back to the altar, and it seems like he restored fellowship there with the Lord and remained there. But then there was strife. So here the fellowship is restored. There is a moment of triumph with him, right? This is what happens. It's glory. I'm back in fellowship with the Lord. And immediately there's strife between his herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen. So now there's a trial. We talked about this a little bit on Sunday, where our normal is disrupted and we can become frustrated, but it's great because it seems like Abram was learning. He was trusting the Lord. He was making good choices at this time, and so he offered to Lot, which side would you like? Lot chose. So we get into chapter 14, and it begins with a bunch of kings. Now, we have to understand that these kings were basically, it was kind of like a mayor of a city. They were kings, so don't get me wrong. But I'm saying these were like city-states. So I was trying to imagine today, as I was preparing, I'm imagining, okay, Tampa. Okay, so let's say Tampa has their own king. And they just decide, you know what, we'd like to have a battle with Orlando. And not on the basketball court or, football gridiron or anything like that. No, we want to go to war. And so they get all their warriors from Tampa and they say, okay, we're going to march over, we're going to walk. We're going to walk over to Orlando in the next few days, and we're going to fight them. And we're going to take their belongings and make them ours, and we're going to make them pay taxes to us because we want them to. We want to be more wealthy. Essentially, that's what's happening here, chapter 14. Right, so here we go. Verse 1, came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of nations. All right, let's stop there for a moment. Where are these places? Any idea? Say, that's why we're here, Pastor? Because you are to tell us. So we're going to look at tonight learning from the past, and let's so we're talking about a battle in the neighborhood. Okay, so here's this battle in the neighborhood. Where are the kings from who are mentioned in verse 1? What region? Anybody know? Okay, it's east. Okay, good. East. That could be anywhere, brother. But you're right. You're on the right track. Yeah, Mesopotamia, which would be also known as, well, it would be like Babylon, Persia, Shinar, that area. So, if you look where Abram was from, he was from roughly that area, a little bit to the north of there. Now it says king of nations. Each of these was a king in a certain area of that region. So Mesopotamia, Babylon, Persia. So one would be in the south, one would be in the eastern part, one would be in the western part. The king of the nations here was most likely in the northern part of that region. As I did some research, that's what it indicated, because I thought, wow, this guy must be the main guy if he's king of nations. But they believe that was reference maybe to a group of cities in the northern part of that region. Okay, verse 2, that these made war with Bera, king of Sodom, and with Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemibar, king of all these different places. They're all these kings. All these were joined together in the Vale of Siddim, which is the Salt Sea. So they leave their area, the east, and they come and they wage war against Sodom, Gomorrah, and these other towns. So these kings over in the east, they form an axis. And they come over and they fight against these other cities. And it says here in verse 4, 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. So they fight near the Dead Sea. And the kings of the east, they conquer these kings, Sodom and Gomorrah. And so for 12 years, they tax them. Well, what happens? When you get tired of paying taxes, you keep paying them, right? Because that's what we do. You elect other officials that promise you less taxes. Well, they didn't have that option. So what they said is, we're tired of this. Those guys are a long ways away. We're not going to pay them our tribute anymore. So they rebelled. So note, it takes a year. In the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and smote Rephaims in Ashtaroth, Karnaim, and the Zuzims, and Ham, and the Emims in Shaveh, Kiriathaim, and the Horites in their mount Seir unto Elparan, which is by the wilderness. See, you read all this and you're saying, what's going on here? It's all build up, right? What is it building toward? Okay, what might this be building toward? You say, okay, the title of tonight is Learning from the Past. So what could this be building toward? Okay, let's continue. Verse 8. There went out the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, the same as Zoar, and they joined battle with them in the Vale of Siddim. So I think what they did is they gathered together and they said, hey, we're going to fight. But they didn't really consider that they might lose. With Chedorlaomer, the king of Elam, and with Tidal, king of nations, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, 4 kings with 5. And the Vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, went into hiding, and they that remained fled to the mountain, and they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their victuals, and went their way. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Okay, so I briefly cover the next question. What does it mean that for 12 years they served Chedorlaomer? That means they pay taxes. Pay taxes to these people. After 12 years, they said, we're tired of it. So in the 13th year, they said, we're not going to pay. So in the 14th year, they had to travel all the way over the hundreds of miles, probably 500 miles by foot to get there. Armies, you have to feed them, you have to take care of them, get them all the way over there, and that's exactly what they did. They traveled there. Okay, so that stirred them up to come and to conquer the rebels. The enemy's big mistake. So the kings of the east defeated the enemy. They took captives and robbed the cities. That's what it says there in those verses 7 through 12. Right? So what kind of men do you think these warriors... I'm sorry, I jumped way ahead. What big mistake did they make? The kings of the east defeated the enemy, took captives, and robbed the cities. What big mistake did they make? Yes. They took Lot. Isn't that interesting here? It's pointed out very clearly to us when verse 12, they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. So what? You took Lot? Big deal. Well, the connection is he's Abram's nephew. Okay, what do we know about Abram so far? Just throw out some things. What do we know about Abram? What are we told?
Served God.
Okay, served God. Good. What else? Father, yeah, God said that you're going to be a father of a nation, and actually, you're going to, like the sands of the sea, your offspring. What's that? Okay, he's gracious, yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're finding that out here, right? So he had a homegrown army of his own people. He's very wealthy, right? So he's not in the same region. And isn't this interesting? That Lot was in the region where these men came and conquered. If Abram would have selected the land that looked better, he would have been the one that was conquered. Instead, Abram said, Lot, you get to pick. Choose the left or the right. Whatever you choose, I'll go to the other one. So he chooses the one that looks better. Well, what does the enemy want? He wants the better land. Why? Because you're going to farm that land. You're going to get more taxes from that land. And so you're going to benefit greater. So let's go conquer those people. And they didn't bother conquering Abram. That's interesting. So Lot chose, and then the enemy comes and conquers Lot. It shows you that God's hand of blessing was upon Abram. God covenanted with this man. God is the key character, if you will, in this whole account, in the whole Bible, okay? But especially in this, we often get caught up in just studying individuals. And we'll look at Abram, we'll say, oh, Abraham was a good man. I mean, he was godly. You go to Hebrews and you'll read about Abraham. You'll read about Noah. You'll read about Joseph. And you'll read about David and Samson. You read about all these people and how great they were. They weren't great. All of them had faults. Every single one of them. The whole thing about Hebrews chapter 11 is about God. It's not about them. It's the God that they had faith in. For us, life is not about whether we are really good people. Okay, we can be good, and we'll find out that we're left wanting because we can't be good enough. Life isn't about success, making a lot of money, because eventually you'll find that there's never enough, because there's more to be gained out there. And you'll actually find yourself doing different things, swindling and so forth, to get more, because greed will take over and it just doesn't satisfy. And so what we do is we think that there are other ways or other things that will bring joy, and that we can control something. We don't have any power to do so. God may let us for a time, but then he reveals to us that we don't have that kind of power. So they made a big mistake by taking Lot. And how did Abram change? How had Abram changed from chapter 12, where he lied about Sarah, until here in chapter 14? How had he changed?
Doesn't seem to be fearful.
Okay.
He's going to battle against these 5 kings, 318 from his family and his
Yeah,
entourage.
that's right.
No indication that he was afraid.
Right. None at all. Whereas when the famine hit, he escaped. Yeah, fear. Now, let's put ourselves in his place. There's no food. What are you going to do? You got to feed your family. You're probably going to up and run too. If the grocery stores go empty, you're going to find a grocery store that has food. But what Abram didn't do is he didn't turn to the Lord, kind of as Clark brought out. There's no indication that he turned to the Lord. Lord, should I go down to Egypt? David did that. When you look at, he was trying to escape from Saul. He went to the Lord. Lord, should I go down and fight against the Hittites? Yes, you should. He was trapped in the city. He had rescued these people. Saul knows where you are. What should I do? He turns to the Lord. What should I do? Is Saul going to come and defeat us? Yes, he is. What should I do? Run. But he was constantly talking to the Lord. There was this fellowship. Abram hadn't learned this, but Abram was learning it. He had learned from the past. He got into a troubling time, and it seems that he was fellowshipping with the Lord and learning from the Lord. So you have this victorious army here. Does the army assembled by Abram remind you of anyone else in the Bible? Verse 14, and when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. Does this remind you of anybody? Gideon. Yeah, I think that's what I think 300, that sounds about right. We're going to go fight the enemy with so few. But there's no indication, as Terry mentioned, of fear. Just like, here we go. I'm taking, guys, you ready? What kind of men do you think these men were? These warriors were? What do you think they were like? Any idea? They were homegrown. What was their occupation? Okay, servants. Okay, farmers. Herdsmen, yeah. What else? You need to have somebody else with all those occupations. Oh, yeah. You have to have cooks. In those times, they were the ladies that cooked. Bodyguards. You have to have bodyguards. They had a lot of wealth, remember. So what do you do about wealth? Well, you have to have security. You have to have security to guard your herds. So these are trained. I'm sure they had trained militia, trained military men. And so he gathers up these, probably did a quick training and said, okay, we've got to travel some 45 miles and chase after the enemy. And that's exactly what he did. So these are, I think what we have here are exactly what we've mentioned. It's a group of farmers, herdsmen, and some bodyguards. They do a quick training, said, okay, we're going to go get Lot. Now, what's interesting about that? What were you going to say, Bob? Yeah, they were loyal to Abram, right? Okay, let's go back here just for a moment. Chapter 13. Who were the people that had issue with whom in that passage? Remember, there was strife. Who had strife? Lot's people and Abram's people. What's Abram asking Lot's people to do? Or Abram asking his people to do? To go rescue Lot. You speak about loyalty. There's loyalty to Abram. They loved Abram and they were willing to go get this guy who chose the better land for the herds and kind of a no good guy, it seems like. And they had caused strife and contention, and now we have to go rescue those people. That's not a point that should be looked at without much thought, because I think there's something there. So Abram hears about this, about his nephew being in trouble. Verse 15, he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night, and smote them and pursued them unto Hobah, which is on the left hand of Damascus. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods, and the women also, and the people. So this is amazing. What has happened here? Why do you think his army was successful? I think there are a few reasons here. Number one, yeah, Steve? Oh, clearly, right? I think he probably sought the Lord's wisdom. Lord, what should we do here? Attacked at night. I mean, it's written right in our scriptures to tell us at night he did this. So he attacks at night. What else? Okay, yeah. He handled it in a strategic way, for sure. Yep, so when you look at it from a human standpoint, he did everything in his power. What else? Yeah.
The other guys probably had let their guard down. They weren't expecting to be attacked. With a few people, Abram is able to get in there and catch it by surprise. And then ultimately it was an act of God.
Yes, exactly. He summed it all up very well. But he's right. They had no expectation that somebody else was going to. They just defeated the foe, right? So they defeat the foe down south. They're making their way back by route to go back home. So they're sitting around. They're probably having a party. They have their servants and they're everybody taken care of. They have their captives, and they're just relaxed. And here it is, nighttime, and they're attacked. They have no idea that there's 318. It could be 3,000. It could be 30,000. And ultimately, it was the Lord. So why do you think his army was successful? Well, the Lord is the number one reason. But yeah, there was strategy here that was involved. And then you have dividing the spoil. Okay, so what's significant about verses 17 to 20? Look with me. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him, Abram, after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, and of the kings that were with him at the valley of Sheva, which is the king's dale. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand. And he gave him tithes of all. That means Abram gave Melchizedek tithes, 10% of all. Stop there. Okay, what's significant about this? By the way, many things, okay, that are significant here. What are some? And we just read these verses, 17 to 20. What do you see here?
We're introduced to Melchizedek.
Yeah, we're introduced to Melchizedek. Yeah, exactly. It raises a whole lot of questions. Well, who's this guy? Where did he come from? And how does he know the Most High God? It seems like God was silent until Abram. Doesn't it seem that way? Noah to Abram. We don't really hear about God. We just go from Noah, his sons, and kind of all that happens there. And it just kind of seems like the people of the earth spread out, and then God's kind of silent until this Abram guy. And then God meets Abram in Ur of the Chaldees and says, I want you to go down to another place, and I'm going to show you where you need to be. And so he says, okay, and by faith he follows the Lord. But it doesn't indicate that the Lord had, a special relationship with anybody else, but apparently he did. It wasn't just Abram. This Melchizedek guy. Okay, so who is Melchizedek? What have you heard about Melchizedek? I've heard all sorts of things. Okay, King of Salem, which is what? Yeah, most likely it's believed that it's Jerusalem. What does the word Salem mean? Peace. This is the first time it's used in Scripture. Peace, right here. Okay, so he's the king of peace. What does Melchizedek mean? We're told in Hebrews chapter 7 that his name means it's king of what? Righteousness. Wow, that's interesting. In Hebrews chapter 7, we're really told that he is a type of Christ. How is he a type of Christ? In what ways? Lineage. Right? We don't read anything about a father or a mother here. Right? There's no ending, right? We have no indication of where, what happened to Melchizedek, and that's practical, right? As you read, guy just shows up out of nowhere, and we don't even hear about him anymore, but we know he's a priest to the Most High God. We haven't even heard about a priest yet. There aren't any priests to this point because the law of Moses hasn't been established. The line of Aaron hasn't been established. I mean, we're talking about something totally new. This is all brand new. Who's this guy? Where is he coming from? This right here, even David brings out in the Psalms in referencing Messiah, showing that indeed Melchizedek is a type of Christ. No beginning, no end. King of peace, king of righteousness. All these things match what Jesus would be like. So, what are certain interpretations of who this Melchizedek may have been? Anybody know what people say are possibilities of who Melchizedek is?
Something was pre-incarnate Christ.
Okay. Some think that he was a pre-incarnate Christ. The name means king of righteousness. So some would say it's just a title, right? And so this is just a pre-incarnate Jesus revealing himself. He does later on to Abram, right? In chapter 18, he reveals himself along with two angels, two messengers there to Abraham and Sarah. All right, so that's a possibility. Okay, some have said that, yes. Okay, yeah, just kind of brings them bread and wine. Maybe they were thirsty and hungry, or maybe there's more to what is being said there. Yeah. Okay, and any other thoughts there? I know you're here to learn from my studies. So, number one, the first one Terry brought out, that Christ himself in a pre-incarnate appearance is what some hold to. There are holes in that position just based on what the text indicates and what we see in Hebrews chapter 7. We're not going to get into that tonight. You can do that on your own. I would actually encourage you to do that. A second one, yes. Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he's well prepared, isn't he? So well prepared that they defeat an army. Yeah, that he's prepared But you remember, he's living amongst the Canaanites, who are wicked, idolatrous people. Yeah, he had to. 12 years, right? So he had to know. So I'm assuming he was prepared in case anybody tried that with him. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. One position is that Melchizedek is a title, as I mentioned, and he was actually Shem. That Shem had made his way here. Now, they say that he could have actually lived 35 years based upon what the scriptures indicate about how long he lived, that Shem could have lived 35 years past Abraham. So Abraham would have died. Shem lived 35 more years. And so some have said that. Now, there are holes in that as well. The conservative position on this would be this. He showed up suddenly. He disappears again as suddenly. There's no genealogy listed, no record of his parents or children, no record of birth or death. He's a mystery, but he's one who worshiped Abram's God. And essentially, he's just a man who loved God that we don't have any information about. That doesn't mean that he didn't just didn't come from a family and just grow up, and he loved the Lord and had come to know the Lord through Shem or Japheth or whomever, and he was committed to the Lord. It was like Elijah. Remember when he ran from Jezebel? He said, I'm alone. There's nobody else. And the Lord said, yeah, I could just see the Lord saying, come on. I have raised up 7,000. You are not alone. There are many others. And so sometimes I think we might feel that way, that we're all alone. And in this case, he's not. And I find it fascinating that Melchizedek had to be well known, because look at verse 17. It says, and the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return. Verse 18, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God, and he blessed him and said, blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all. And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, give me the persons, take the goods to thyself. Wait a minute, what just happened here? Here's what happened. Melchizedek is a more important king than the king of Sodom. And so he has stepped back. He's let Melchizedek come in. Melchizedek has said his piece, blessed Abram, and he has stepped away. Now the king of Sodom comes back in and says, hey, take all the goods. They're all yours. And that leads us to really our final point. Oh, I didn't even get to the first two. I already talked about that. And we looked at Melchizedek. You can look up these passages. We're running out of time here, but I want to touch on this. Why did Abram not take the spoil from the battle? And I think this is where the lesson is especially learned. This is where it all comes out here. Why didn't Abram take the spoil? Caleb? Exactly. A wicked man, a wicked king, and he could boast, say, you see that man, Abram? He is wealthy. I'm the reason why he's wealthy. Abram wanted all the credit to go to God. And he learned that. He learned that it's about God. God's the one who blesses me, not this king of Sodom. He is the one that takes care of me. And what a valuable lesson we can learn. We can maneuver, we can gain popularity, we can be successful in our workplace by maneuvering and playing off of people, manipulating. We can do all that. But it wasn't the Lord who blessed. It was us who worked our magic. And Shireen. Right. That's right. Good. Yeah, you do see a difference here. The kings of the east, Their whole idea is the spoils and all the others, right? Godless people, it's about the money. And Abram was about rescuing his nephew. It wasn't about the spoils. It wasn't about, I just want to save my nephew because he could die, and I don't want that to happen. So he goes out, saves, and brings back everything that was stolen as well. And they redistribute it to all those people. It's amazing. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, quite possibly. Yep. Take the spoils, give me the people. Is what Shireen brings out. That's a good point. It seems a little like the king of Sodom. So, what lesson is learned? Well, he goes through a choice that he's made on his own. His own wisdom is, hey, wife, say that you're my sister. We'll go into this, and we'll go on our own wisdom. Okay? Don't seek God. There's no indication that he ever sought God. Go into it, get burned really bad. And actually, Abram could have said, yeah, but I got wealth out of it. I'm a wealthy man now, but he didn't do that. He went back to the place where he met God because that was the most important thing. And then when he was tried after that to see if his faith would be in God, he passed the first test. And now he's passing another test. And look, this is life, right? I talked about it on Sunday. Anticipate trials. They're coming. Okay, let's not be surprised when life is disrupted. Let's not be surprised when we get hurt or we have to go to the hospital, when the car breaks down totally unexpectedly. We don't, it just happens. Just like 2 weeks ago, I get a call from Casey. She said, I'm driving in, but the van started really hard. Like it barely started. I said, okay, sounds like the battery's dead. Come on, it should be okay. So she did. She got in. So I said, I'm going to go get the battery taken care of. Well, I didn't have this in my schedule. It wasn't scheduled to go get the battery taken care of. So I get to the place to get the battery. It was under warranty, so it was great. I got a free battery, right? I already paid for it the first time. Batteries used to be like $40. Now they're like $200. So I already paid for it. But anyway, but I have to stand there for an hour and a half waiting for somebody. Well, they first help me. And the girl goes through the whole thing, and there's a guy working on somebody else's battery. And he's not Mr. Hasty, he's paid by the hour. And so, he's taking his time, does a good job. So I'm not, but it's taking its time. So finally he gets over, and I leave Casey at like 1:30. And I finally get back at 3:00. She's like, man, where were you? I said, I was getting the battery taken care of. That wasn't planned, right? But if I can anticipate that a trial's going to come, I'll be more prepared, right? Almost like what Shireen brought up about Abram. There was a little bit of preparation there. So let's, in our hearts, be prepared. What am I going to do? How am I going to show my faith in my Lord? I'm going to talk to him first. Not going to get all frazzled because things got, my day wasn't the way I scheduled and planned out my day. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, Lord, you had a plan in this. Now help me through it. I don't like what's happening. My battery just died. I didn't really plan this. But anticipate. It will happen. You look at Abram, it happened. One after another after another. And it'll happen for you. Just look around. We could probably go to everybody in here, and I can say, tell me about the last couple weeks. Tell me about some things that disrupted your normal routine. And I'll bet you everybody in here has a few things that they could share with us. So you're not the only one. Just anticipate, plan on it. But when it happens, make sure your plan involves God, that we invite him in, and our faith and trust is in him and not our own ability to work our way and finagle our way through whatever we're dealing with. Let's do it with the Lord's help. All right, let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for our time in the Word tonight. Thank you for lessons that were learned in the Scriptures. We can glean from those lessons ourselves. And Lord, help us to anticipate trials. And when they come, that we'll talk to you, we'll request wisdom from you, and we'll walk with you right through it. And when we fail, help us to be forthright about it, whether we have to talk to somebody and apologize to them and get right with them, or talk to you and confess an attitude of anger or frustration, that we'll do that. Lord, whatever we need to restore fellowship in whatever way, help us to be willing to do that and to learn lessons from the past. Thank you for the good example of Abram here. And may we be a good example to somebody else with the lessons we learn. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Well, have a good night. We're dismissed. Terry, can I talk to you first?